Hello, everybody. I've got the wonderful Stuart France with me today. Now, he's written a book that took me by surprise when I discovered it. As you all know, one of my favorite books is Maurice Nicoll's Living Time, and I put an audio up on YouTube. And then I found Stuart's book. Well, a friend told me about it, and I have known Stuart. I've met him a few times. Stuart's written a book called Nuances of Nicoll, which is all about, well, I'm going to hand it over to you, Stuart. Explain what Nuances of Nicoll are, and welcome to my channel.
Thank you for having me. Yeah, well, the nuances was I'd read Living Time a couple of times, and as you know, it's quite a deep book. So I thought I would try and make some notes on my next read, and those eventually turned into sort of like little poetic kind of like musings along the themes that Nicole touches upon. And then, as you know, one of his major theses is in the book is that the ancients were involved in this process of psychological time and what he's talking about. And as I was working my way through the book, it suddenly occurred to me that, I mean, he talks about the Egyptians and the Greeks, but it suddenly occurred to me that actually our own sort of mythologies, if you could call them that, so the Merlin figure, the Arthurian figures, and also some of the characters from Norse mythology would also fit this kind of mold. So as I'd kind of got as far as I could go with the Nicoll stuff. So I thought I'll look at some of their story, the stories of Merlin and some of the Scandinavian, the Norse myths, Odin in particular, and see whether I can get anything from that, which is what, in a way, he's probably wanting us to do. He wants us to take it into other mythologies. And that seemed to work really well. So it goes off on a bit of a tangent after the Nicoll stuff finishes, but I just went with it. And I think it works actually. I was
It
quite
does.
pleased.
I was going to say, it doesn't really go. I know what you mean. It goes off on a tangent, but it doesn't. It flows into that going off. It's not, it's a
Yeah,
continuation because, I love Merlin. I love any wonderful ancient being from the past because I feel like we're supposed to be reconnecting with them. And actually, my introduction into, let's say, esoteric ways when I was a teenager was through Odin and through the runes. So for me, that was also a little delight as
mm.
well. It's like, oh, excellent, taking me back. Um, but then they should all be connected anyway. And I strongly feel that, as I think Nicole was saying, is we need the ancients back to keep us on track.
Mm. Absolutely. I think what he's really saying is that these are actually psychological states that we can attain. So it's not necessarily that. I mean, I think Odin is a particular energy. The Merlin energy, the Arthur energy is slightly different, but these are states that we can find within ourselves at different times of our life, which will help us in our life.
And that
So,
applies to men and women, doesn't it? Because I know we're talking about male figures here, but we find the
well,
feminine
no,
Merlin in us.
yeah, I didn't touch on Guinevere, but I think Guinevere would work as well within that. I mean, that's something that I'd probably like to look at. Yeah, I think it works for women as well, definitely.
Because I've got a lot of my subscribers from the Gurdjieff work, so we're always looking at Maurice Nicoll's writings and such. Like, did you come to him through like a psychological path, or was it just a book you happened to come across?
Well, I've just left. I spent 10 years in an esoteric school, a modern mystery school, and that was based on the Enneagram. We used that as our sort of like system of teaching. So there was a correspondence course which took you through the personality types of the Enneagram, but looking at them in a spiritual way and a psychological way rather than just in terms of, this is your personality, what can we get out of you? So I was aware of the Gurdjieff, and then that led on to the Nicoll stuff. And when I started, and we also did like as part of one of our workshops, we did some work on the parables that Nicoll had set out, looking at the codes within the sort of like the Jesus teaching, particularly the miracles that John talks about. So that was like, we'd done some work on that, and then I came to, I read The Mark and The New Man, and then Living Time, which I thought, oh God, this is amazing. But it's, you have to keep going back to it, don't you? Because it's such a deep and involved book, So I thought, I want to work with this, and the best way for me to work with it was to sort of like make notes, and then maybe craft those notes into sort of like little poems or poetic musings. And so that's what I started doing, and from that all this other stuff sort of just came through.
Because it's
So
a
yeah,
lot of pondering, isn't it? Which is very important in the Gurdjieff epoch. And I think in a lot of esoteric works, where we're supposed to ponder, we take in the knowledge and we ponder on it and turn it into wisdom, which is why I found your book quite delightful, because it just felt like I'm reading someone else's ponderings, but at the same time, it's making me ponder.
Yeah. Well, that's the transmission, isn't it? And I think, these people want us to take these things and work with them. It's not just a question of reading, memorizing, and regurgitating. When you work with the text, you get so much more from it. I mean, we some of our workshops in the school, I used to, when I was tasked with writing them, I used to always use a traditional story. And you were aware of this. I think I did Gawain and the Green Knight first. Obviously I knew the story, but as soon as you start working with it, you see so many different angles, and it leads off in so many different ways, and it's just like you're actually dealing with a different entity as soon as you start to work with it. And a book is no different. I think once you start to think, well, how can this work for me, rather than just reading it as somebody else's idea, I don't think you ever really get to the gist of it until you start to work with it for yourself.
So being part of a mystery school obviously helped you in your uh, path. And I know a lot of my viewers come to me, they can't find any mystery schools to go to, because I've been trying to encourage people, will find it, work on yourselves. Do you have any advice or anything for people like that haven't got anyone to go to get help or advice? How do people work as a mystery school these days?
Well, I mean, there are a number. I'd started quite a long time ago when I joined a Druid order. And these things are usually correspondence course, and then there's, after you've done that for a while, there's usually meetings that you can go to, so you get in touch with people. I mean, I left the Druids after about a year because there was no one in my area, and then I joined the Rosicrucians, which is another sort of like well-known, well-established school. Same sort of thing. There was a correspondence course, but there was actually like a little group in my area. I was in Sheffield at the time, so I went along to that. So that was, you know, really helpful, because then you obviously, like you say, you like-minded people. You're both or you're all on the course. So if you have got questions and problems, you can discuss them and stuff like that. But I mean, I don't, having spent a long time in, various schools, I don't think they're necessary. It might sometimes feel like they are, but one of the things I learned really that moved me on more than anything that I read in the correspondence courses really was, if you go out into nature and you ask the question, the universe answers. It might not be in the way you think it is, but you will get an answer. So it's not, you don't need anybody. It's helpful if there are other people around, but you don't need them. Your guide, your teacher is nature itself.
I totally agree with that. I try and encourage people to go out all the time, actually. But also, a lot of your other books are very nature based, but with would you say, an esoteric streak to them. Maybe you would like to talk about some of your other books that you've written that would relate to that maybe people could look up or buy.
Yeah, well, when I was in the last school that I was a part of, I used to work with my partner Sue, who passed a couple of years ago. So we wrote quite a few books, and really that was where all that came from. We went to a sacred site. I arranged to go over and spend a few days at hers, and we went to Uffington, the White Horse there, and from that moment, really, things started to shift for us. And she went through something very similar, and we ended up writing lots of books together about the adventure we ended up on. And it's very difficult to say what actually happened on that morning. It was a really misty morning, which, you know, sort of Celtic mists, and we saw some sort of like birds fly over the hill fort. There were ravens, and then a sort of buzzard swooped in and chased the ravens off. And Sue just sort of went, "Oh, look, the hawk of the morning has chased away the birds of the night." And suddenly it was just like we could see sort of like ancient people walking up the hill and stuff, and drums and flames and everything, like, you know, was going. So when we sort of like went to a few other sites that day, and the birds seemed to follow us everywhere we went.
Probably the
So,
ancients as birds.
well, you know, I mean, I've just been reading about augury, and augury was originally just watching the flight of birds. You know, that's how it started. I mean, I know it sort of like degenerated into sacrificing animals and things, but originally it was just like watching bird flight. So that seemed to fit with all that. And when we sort of like got back and thought about it, he said, you know, I should make a really good story as background reading for what we were doing in the school. You know, if people want to join a school, say, oh, what's it about? Oh, well, like, you know, read this first before you sign up for the correspondence course. So it was almost like we were being led through the land by the cat, particularly the red kites. We followed them to various sites, and all these sites seem to be on ley lines, and they all seem to have Templar connections, and so that all sort of like fed into the stories that we were writing. So eventually there were 9 books in that series, but I mean, you know, get the first one, which is the initiate, and if you like that, you'll in all probability like the others.
I see it'd be like following the course through, but with
Yeah,
walking that
yeah,
path with you and with Sue.
yeah.
Oh. And what would you recommend, or what would you be doing in the future? Do you, you know, not saying that you have to tell us your personal esoteric path, but where are you, do you see you're going forward?
Well, I'm at the minute I'm gathering all the books together because we tended to write in threes. So I'm going to do like sort of like a compendium of each of the threes, and then that should work as a course if people just want to read the books and study the books. I mean, they can be read, but they can also be studied. So you get more out of them if you study them, and also try to go to some of the sites that we go to and pick up on the energies and ask the questions there, as we did. And hopefully you'll be led on your own adventure, your own sort of like quest. So that shouldn't take long now. And as a culmination to all that, I seem to be being drawn to the Glastonbury zodiac.
Ah,
That
okay.
seems to have, yeah. I mean,
I keep saying Catherine Mansfield, but that's the actress. I've forgotten. I've forgotten the name of the lady that did the Glastonbury Zodiac.
oh, it was, yeah, it was. Oh,
I know she
I,
was the wife of the Oxo man who
yeah,
developed
I've got it.
Oxo.
Yeah, uh, Catherine Maltwood.
Maltwood. I knew
Catherine
it was an M.
Maltwood.
Catherine Maltwood. Yes.
Yeah, yeah. So, and one thing I didn't realize is that one of the Grail stories is actually supposed to be all about the figures of the Glastonbury zodiac. So I thought I'd quite like to follow that up
Yes, I
because
would like to be interested in that very much. I look forward
I
to
mean,
reading that one.
I'd started getting the Arthurian stuff through, and I was thinking, why, you know? And then all this came up, so I thought that's obviously where it's edging me. And weirdly, in the second series of books, we spent a lot of time in Glastonbury, and we called one of the books "Giant's Dance," and we were thinking it alluded to Stonehenge because that's one of the names of Stonehenge, but also we saw this sort of like map of the, you know, the effigy figures, the zodiacal figures, and it suddenly went, that's called Giant's Dance as well. And I think we went after the wrong Giant's Dance. We should have been going after the Zodiac, but I don't think we'd have been able to do what we needed to do at that time, because we were doing a series of talks in Glastonbury anyway, so we were kind of caught up with that. So now I've got a bit of time. I'm thinking I maybe go and investigate that. I mean, other people have looked at it. I know Yuri Leach is quite into all that, and there is actually there's a group of people that come up on Facebook that are actually into the Zodiac. So it's just, I just feel like I'm going to read all I've read the Maltwood books, and I've got the High History of the Grail. So I'm going to read that and take it from there, I think.
I actually used to sacrilege poo-poo this Zodiac, this Glastonbury Zodiac, and then I was taken with someone and walked it, and then I saw it and felt it, and I realized, oh, this is true. It's hard to explain, isn't it? But then they're not just in Glastonbury, they're in other countries as well. I have subscribers from around the world, so we're encouraging you to go to your sacred sites.
Yeah, I mean, there's some more. Not, I don't think there is as big or as well defined as the Glastonbury one. There's some more in Britain as well. But yeah, I think it's the feeling more than anything that gives you the truth of it. I mean, obviously it's very difficult to see them unless you're in an aeroplane. But we've been to the Burrow Mump, and that's supposed to be, because there's a figure of a dog, which is kind of like the guard, which guards the figures. So it's like the Carabas kind of thing. And we've been to the mump is the nose of the dog that guards the figures. So that was as close as we got last time. But yeah, up there, it's like I wouldn't say it's as energetically charged as the tour, but it's not far off. So there's obviously something going on there. So
yeah, I get quite a call into. I went to Glastonbury. I try and go every year, but last year was telling me you need to come and live here. It's like, okay, I've got to try and find the money, because I think it needs. I'm not saying I'm magical, but people like us there, I think it's becoming too taken over by the norms of the world, and it's calling out for, I need spiritual people or soulful people to keep the mysteries and the myths alive.
I think that's right. I often when I go to Glastonbury, I always feel at home there, and I always think it would be great to not necessarily live in Glastonbury, but live on the outskirts, so it's within easy reach. But I mean, if you're really going to study those forms, you would have to be there permanently, really, because there's no other way to do it. You can't really just keep traveling down there and doing a weekend or something like.
It's just not enough time, is it? Yes,
No.
this is how I feel. I keep asking the old gods and goddesses, find me the way to move there. But then it's the same in other countries. They will also have their sacred sites somewhere that they can go to, for, people that watch this that don't live in England or the UK. But you did mention the Enneagram, and obviously I have a lot of Gurdjieff people from that side. Did you look at it from the Gurdjieff point of view, or just from the personality version?
No, I mean the idea was we were using it as, like, the Kabbalah in for the Jews and the Western mystery tradition. We were using it as a glyph in which to work magic, and obviously part of magic is development of the psyche. But certainly, I mean, I know it's used as a tool in business just to sort of pigeonhole people into what personalities are, and so they know how to get the best out of them, sort of thing. But we were looking at it from terms of magical development. I mean, Steve adds. I don't think he's done it yet, but I think he started work on a book called The Magical Enneagram. So. And we used it in all our sort of our indoor workshops. We did one of those a year, and we used that as the ground plan for the workshop. So when I did the Green Gawain and the Green Knight, we fitted the story around the the Enneagram. So we'd have the knights and the ladies on all the spheres, and then what they said would be linked to the type, the personality type of that. Do you know what I mean? So you fit it to
Okay,
that.
yeah.
You fit it to that system. Get a
I've
lot of
done that with
mm,
somebody else, with doing it with Ouspensky's books and his chapters. So I do know what you mean, and I can see how that fits together with books that have a beginning, middle, and end that are a circle. Do you know what I mean? Rather than just a linear story, they're trying to bring you round so that you're learning something. Your first half is the beginning of your adventure, then you come
yeah,
to the bottom and have to take that turning point, and then you're going back up again. So I understand all that, and it's quite interesting. I started looking into Parserville in the last year, so there's definitely an Arthurian call going on out there, I think. And I know I'm
yeah.
not the only one. Other people have been coming to the old Arthurian tales.
Yeah, so I kept seeing the wild hunt and the stag and stuff around about Christmas time, and I actually went. I felt the urge to go to Glastonbury, so we just went for a few days, uh, and then that gave me an inkling. I did a book based on some of the blog posts we'd put out, but then that kind of opened itself up to all the Maltwood stuff. So that definitely seems to be needing attention next. Once I've got all these books, I mean, it shouldn't take too long now to get these books into sort of compendia. Sort of, I'm halfway through it really. So
Would you
yeah.
start doing workshops again for people, or is that something for the
Uh,
future?
I'm always open to take people out into the landscape. I think the indoor workshops are more difficult now. I don't know whether we'd be able to get the conference centre we used to use. I don't even know if they're still going. I think they closed down after the COVID thing. But I'm always happy to take people into the landscape and go through our system of how we work with the land and how we got the energies going. We used to use chants, and we used to get people to bring poetry or stories and get them to read at different points, and that always got things moving. Got them moving as well. It worked really well.
Which is what it is, because we don't want to just be talking at people, do we? We want to try and get people doing something. If we can lead them on a
Well,
way, trying to
quite
help.
early on, we realised you can't just take people to a site. You've got to do something there with the site and with them and get them involved. Like you say, you can't just talk at them.
Mm.
You've got to get them involved, and then they start to feel how the land moves, and that's part of the communication. So that when you do ask the question, you are in a state to hear the answer and act on it. So
Yeah, because I think some people find it a bit nerve-wracking if they're doing it by themselves and they've never done this kind of thing before. So I think I know people that would probably be very interested in doing them kind of workshops with you. And should someone want to find out more, do you have a website, or is there some way they can get in touch with you?
yeah, the website is France and Vincent, which is all one word, .com. So franceandvincent.com. And if I post usually once a week on a Monday, sometimes twice a week, so Monday and Wednesday. And if you put a comment on under the post, you can link to my email through there. So
Oh, that's
yeah.
great. Yeah, that's a good way for
And
people.
all the books are on the website as well. So there's actually a section with the books. You can just click on that and look at all the different books and everything. And at the moment, I was thinking of going up to Ilkley Moor in September. So if anybody's interested in that, it would just be meeting at 12 at the Cow and Calf, and then we could spend an afternoon on the moors, because there's a lot of stuff just on the edge of the moors, which is, I mean, it's really weird. You're kind of like, if you're at the Cow and Calf, you just cross the road, you're on the moor, but there's like lots of sort of really interesting monuments and areas really just on the edge of the moor. You don't really have to go too deeply in there, so you could easily do an afternoon and cover like 5 or 6 sites. There's sort of petroglyphs up there. There's giant figures. There's a lovely lake where you can do a meditation. So I was thinking of doing that sort of September the 4th, I think, at the moment.
Oh,
But
I like the sound of that. I might be
yeah,
doing that as well then. I might join you if I can
well, that'd be
figure out
cool. Yeah,
a way to get up there.
yeah,
Well,
it'd be
I'm going to
brilliant.
bring this to a close because this is going to cut off soon. But thank you very much for doing this, Stuart. And I hope we can do some more. I would like to do some
Yeah,
more on your other books, actually, and other discussions. So thanks again. Thank you, everybody, for watching and
brilliant.
listening.
Thanks for having me. Enjoyed it.
My pleasure.
See
Oh,
you
I'm glad. And we'd definitely do some more. So thanks,
soon.
everybody. Until next time. Peace and out.